Cowboys Commanders, next game I want to hit here. Dallas wins this game 34-26. I think a lot of people thought that this was going to be an easy win for the Washington Commanders, and Dallas goes in there and look at that. They win the football game. Top 5 graded players for the Dallas Cowboys in this one. Cornerback Jordan Lewis, an 84.0. Linebacker Eric Kendricks, a 78.0. Guard TJ Bass with a 75.8. Wide receiver CeeDee Lamb, a 74.6. Safety Donovan Wilson, a 73.3. Cooper Rush in this game, 60.4 overall grade. And then on Washington's side of things, wide receiver Diami Brown was the top graded player with a 79.5. Defensive tackle Sheldon Day, a 73.6. Wide receiver Noah Brown, 72.2. Edge rusher Dorrance Armstrong, a 71.9, and then linebacker Frankie Louvu with a 70.2. Jaden Daniels in this one, an 86.5. It's a really good grade for a quarterback in a loss. And so it looked different for the Commanders, though. This is a very different-looking football game. Stat that told the story. Dalton, what do we got?
I'm going to go with the third phase here, special teams. I mean,
very coach of you.
Yeah, right? I mean, I always love just talking about it, too. Anytime I can bring it up here, even though all the talk is always about the two fun phases, this is actually the fun one, but not for the Commanders in this game. Look, Austin Seibert missed a field goal, missed 2 extra points. Obviously, the one at the end after Jaden McLaurin pulled the miracle, 86-yard touchdown that should have tied the game. I'm so used to saying it tied it because we take it for granted, but 33-yard extra points you can't take for granted. Kavontae Turpin with the ridiculous Madden spin move on the kick return for a touchdown. Even on the other side, you had some, I would call it a blunder. I'm not sure. I get it, the adrenaline's going and you're making a play, but not exactly sure what Wanye Thomas was doing, returning that onside kick all the way for a touchdown to give the Commanders the ball back again. Plus, you had Brandon Aubrey with a missed field goal and a blocked field goal. Special teams in this game was an absolute circus, and the entire game became an absolute circus because of it. And it seems to be a theme I think we're getting with some teams more as it rolls on. We've talked about the Bears with their field goals. Hell, I was even at a game Saturday, Ohio State, Indiana. The 2 biggest plays in that game were special teams plays, right? I mean, these are the plays that can turn things around. And for the Commanders, especially at the end of the game, this was their biggest problem. Is every time they came to punch back and they were right on the brink of taking the game over, something wrong will happen on special teams. So that can happen. It's kind of the dichotomy of an upset. That can happen. If you blow the third phase, the team can take advantage.
I want to talk about the Cowboys' deep coverage because it wasn't perfect. It's not like I have a stat that's like totally like a slam dunk. Look at how they locked them down. But, when you look at before that Hail Mary, before the Terry McLaurin Hail Mary, and I'm going to do this a couple of times because the Hail Mary sort of broke this game open into chaos. And I think that you sort of have to take that away and go with more of the, all right, what happened for the 3.5 quarters of this football game approach before you get into the craziness that was whatever it was the last 5-8 minutes of this game. Before the Hail Mary to McLaurin, Cowboys on deep coverage, 6 targets of 15 or more yards, only give up 2 receptions before that McLaurin bomb. Just a 7.9 average depth of target before the Washington Hail Mary, only 180 passing yards for Jaden Daniels before that McLaurin pass, which was the 3rd lowest total that week for a quarterback at that point in time. At that point in time in the game. So to me, I thought the Cowboys did a really good job of just playing cap coverage, basically saying we're not going to let Jaden do what he has done to other teams through the first 6 weeks of the season and what he did all of last year at LSU that won him a Heisman Trophy. We are going to, essentially, it's what the Buffalo Bills are doing this year, right? I don't know exactly the coverages that they deployed. I don't know if it was a lot of cover 2, a lot of quarters like the Bills are doing, but whatever they were doing, it was limiting what Jaden Daniels was going to be able to do to push the ball deep down the field. And however they were defending him, it worked perfectly because he was not explosive at all until you get to the final 8 minutes of that football game. So to me, that's a huge stat that told the story because it allowed the Cowboys to stay in it. They were allowed to think that, okay, we were right there, and they ended up winning the football game, which I don't think a lot of people gave them the ability to do in this one. So to me, I thought that how they played in that deep coverage, it was great for how they countered what Washington wants to do well. I think that we're going to start to, if we haven't already, have the Cliff Kingsbury conversations because Cliff always seems to, the offensive coordinator for the Washington Commanders, Cliff always seems to start hot, right? Even with his time with the Arizona Cardinals, obviously the first 6 weeks of the season with the Washington Commanders, it's like, oh my gosh, nearly 80 to 100% in the red zone, 75% on third down. I mean, nobody can stop this offense. Nobody knows what's coming. Now we're into the second half of the season, and it's sort of the same script like it always has been with Cliff Kingsbury, is that once he is figured out in the middle of the year, he doesn't really have a counterpunch. It's like he goes into the season saying, okay, this is what I want to do this year. When defenses sort of adjust to that, he doesn't really have an adjustment back. And so these last, what do we got now? Like 6 games, 5-6 games?
Yep.
These last 5-6 games for the Commanders are going to be huge, specifically for Cliff Kingsbury. Because if they continue to sort of sputter down the end and not make it into the playoffs, they're absolutely going to change offensive coordinators, even with as good of a beginning of the season that Jaden Daniels had.
I don't know that they would do that, because I think we have to put into perspective where this team was last year. They were the second worst team in football.
Yeah, but the whole regime's different, right?
It is, but the idea, they weren't supposed to be this good anyway. Making the playoffs would be an absolute party for them, right? They don't have, I think the big thing for me, and here's the coverage question. This is something I had a feeling, I was looking into it during the Steeler game and now this game. They don't have, you mentioned, what are the adjustments? They don't have guys who can separate. They don't have that much talent. They need in this offseason, whether it's T. Higgins or Chris Godwin or somebody at receiver in free agency, or they draft a Tet McMillan or Luther Burden, they need something else. Man-to-man coverage is where I'm going with this, okay?
Okay.
The Commanders have the 9th best receiving grade in the league against zone coverage. It's 28th against man. You're getting now the adjustment where teams are lining up. They are not afraid of Noah Brown. They're not afraid of De'Ami Brown. They're not afraid of Zach Ertz. They're not really afraid of Austin Eckler out of the backfield. He's good. He's still effective-ish, but he's not a blazer or anything like that. Terry McLaurin's the only guy you feel like can beat you man-to-man. Mm-hmm. But he's not going to do it every play, right? I think we're learning with the Commanders as the season wears on. There's a reason they were the second worst team in football last year. They lacked talent. They don't have an elite receiver outside of McLaurin. They don't have an elite offensive line that's not playing well the last 5-6 weeks after they got off to a pretty hot start. The first, when they were off to that 7-2 they started? Offensive line was off to a good start. Now they're playing better. They're playing better defensive fronts with players like TJ Watt and Justin Matabike and Micah Parsons. Mm-hmm. That makes it harder, right? And you do get the adjustments. And to beat man-to-man coverage when you have lesser guys, you do need the play calling to be better. There's man beaters that every coach draws up every week, but the Commanders aren't getting to them. Jaden Daniels in this game against man coverage, 2 for 8 with 10 yards. That's where it's at. They're lining up in first it was, okay, we're beating them up front because their offensive line's still not that good. Second is, we're just going to challenge these guys on the outside. Go ahead. If Noah Brown or De'Ami Brown or somebody else or Luke McCaffrey separates from us, sure, we'll take that gamble. Even the Steelers did it, and they don't have that great a secondary, but they said, we don't think you guys are that good either. That's, to me, where I go, okay, we are seeing around. My most disappointing is just the lack of help for Jaden Daniels. Because I go, he's got Terry McLaurin, and then we still need more to work on in this offseason, right? The offensive line. The running backs, 17 carries for 57 yards. Doesn't get it done.
Run game's tough. I mean, when this team can't run the football, and I think I'll go back to when they were having success at the beginning of the season. Jaden Daniels was getting all the headlines and everything, but they were running the ball really well. They were one of the best rushing teams in the NFL. And I think over the last 5-6 games, it's not the total opposite, but they are not having nearly as much success. Brian Robinson Jr. has been out of the lineup, but he's been in the lineup. He was in the lineup this game, and it just was not effective for this team.
They just aren't. We have to remember, as a team, as a whole team, they aren't that talented. But a not that talented team gets a jump start when they suddenly get an elite quarterback. And I'm here, you know me, I'm the Jaden defender anyway.
Yeah.
People are going to go, well, what's wrong with Jaden now that they're on this losing streak? And I'll sit here and go, nothing.
You just think it's the team.
Yeah.
The team's not talented.
They're just not that good. They're not 7-2 good to eventually go 13-4 good. They were never 13 win good. They won close games. They ran the ball. They got some stuff done against some teams that they are better than. They're a lot better. They still could be a wild card, but there's still a lot of things to improve with this roster.
I think Kavontae Turpin was my most impressive, to go back to what you were talking about with special teams. But it's sort of like a 2-week thing here for him. Obviously, this past week he had the punt return touchdown, which was awesome. One of the best punt returns that we're going to see this season. Last week he had 3 targets, 3 catches, 85 receiving yards, 65 after the catch, and 1 touchdown. So he's becoming a legitimate weapon. I mean, speaking of teams that feels like they lack talent, Dallas Cowboys, it's CeeDee Lamb and
find a way.
Who is after this? And it's opening the door for guys like Turpin to be like, hey, I'm fast. Putting his hand up and be like, all right, what do you guys offer? And he goes, fast. And it's like, all right, cool. We're going to emphasize that. He's getting the opportunities, and obviously it's proven to be very, very useful for them on the offensive side of the ball. But that's a team that needs to get better talent-wise as well. I don't disagree with you that that I don't think the Washington Commanders are where they want to be talent-wise. I still wonder if there's no big adjustment for Cliff. Is he the guy who you want to?
I think you have to let
figure that talent out.
You're not gonna upend that after the first year of it.
Just because of how it was successful it was out of the gate.
Yes, and understanding where you're at as a roster. Right. I mean, I think even to this point, even at 7-5 now, to be where they are, and for Jaden to be where he is, I don't see any reason to upend that. I know there's a history, and I know there's all the memes and all the stuff all over Twitter about after such and such week, and even go. You can't upend that, right? I don't see any reason to be thinking about Cliff Kingsbury's job here. Almost no matter, because let's be real, you could end the season today, and the Commanders' season's a success, considering where they've been the last few years, and especially last year.
That's fair.
Last year, they gave up the most points in football.
That's fair.
And their offense was just horrendous. I mean, and this year, the talent is different in certain spots with some veterans they signed, but they still need a lot more before they're a perennial contender like that. I don't see any reason to shake up anything they're doing. Just keep riding the process and building the roster.
That's fair. That's a fair assessment. Anybody most disappointing, most impressive that we didn't hit for you?
Impressive. I had just had the Cowboys. Honestly, I thought especially the first half of this game was probably the best their defense looked all year. And in fact, 78.3 defense.
Defense is coming along better. Yeah. A lot better than it was at the beginning.
It's at least giving them a chance. And
yes.
Their first half defensive grade, 78.3, the best in any first half of a game this season. And
that
was part of it was, the Cowboys defense did play well. This isn't just about the Commanders here. They came out and played well. They only allowed 3.8 yards per play in the first half. That'll do. You get off to a good start. You stay in a tight game. You wait for a team to make mistakes. You can pull an upset, and that's what they did.
Thanks for watching, everybody. Make sure you like and subscribe the video. And if you don't have a PFF Plus subscription, you can get one to see all the premium stats that we talked about here on the show, plus the expert betting and fantasy advice over at subscribe.pff.com. The description is also right below, so if you are not a PFF Plus subscriber, you can become one today.